Greetings and welcome to the Department of Tangents podcast, a conversation with artist and animator Philo Barnhart with new music from Matt York. I'm your host, Nick Zano. This is the last of the 4 podcasts I taped last November at the Northeast Comic-Con and Collectibles Extravaganza, which happens twice a year out in Boxborough, Massachusetts. Philo Barnhart was one of the guests there, and he's had a long and varied career. We get into his resume straight away in the interview and drill down from there. You've seen his animation work on Disney's The Little Mermaid, on The Smurfs, Super Friends, and more. You may even have heard his voice if you're a fan of early animated video games, but I'll make you listen to the rest of the episode to hear more about that. Barnhart comes from a family of animators. Mother Phyllis was an animator and cell painter, and Philo used to go with his dad Dale when he worked as a background artist for Disney, which is how he was nearly the voice of Winnie the Pooh. We are also both huge Yellow Submarine fans, which I enjoyed exploring with him. He is a delightful and colorful conversationalist, which you will hear presently. And stick around after the conversation for this week's featured track, Permanent Crush, by Matt York, who was my guest on episode 49. And now, Philo Barnhart Live.
Philo Barnhart panel happening right now, don't miss out!
All right, so we'll start with your resume. I can't list everything, but it would be fair to say you're an artist and an animator who has worked on feature films and TV shows like The Little Mermaid, The Smurfs, Star Trek The Motion Picture, Super Friends, Scooby-Doo, Jem and the Holograms, and the animated Star Trek show and video games, and you currently work as an artist and a consultant with Silver Phoenix Entertainment.
Well, it was actually my mom that worked on the Star Trek animated show.
Oh, well, was it?
Yeah,
was it?
at Filmation. But I worked for Filmation just before Mermaid in 85 and 86. Yeah.
And when you started, well, you're a second generation
Disney
artist.
And I never gave a thought to going into the business myself, but I knew I wanted to stick with art. So, in general.
But when you were a kid, at what age did you know what your dad did at Disney?
Probably around 6 and 7, because I started visiting the studio for real. Not just hearing him talk about it at dinner, but actually going into the studio pre-kindergarten, so I was able to walk there. They were 5 blocks away from our home in Burbank, and have lunch with him some days. I just dropped by the central office in the front and get the pass he had waiting for me, and that allowed you to go on the lot. And I would go up to his room, and we'd go eat in the commissary, and it was quite a place then. I used to see Walt Disney walking around all the time. Finally, I got a chance to try acting, voice acting for Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree, the first one they made. And I was about 7 years old. And I was runner-up to the boy that finally got the part. He was the director's son, Bruce Reitherman, Willie Reitherman's son. So,
but no hard feelings, as you said in the book.
No, of course not, because at that time I got to be in Mary Poppins with my real father. So I started to be aware of how animation was really done. And up till then, we'd seen the films on the rentals that he would bring home. In those days, you could rent the films and bring them home, and along with a projector, and run them for your family or for birthday parties or whatever. So
yeah, well, my dad used to work at Kodak and had that. We used to watch Robin Hood.
One of the perks of working for a film company. So I actually was being shown pencil tests by the animators. We're still around then and still doing great stuff, and it's just amazing to see those drawings suddenly moving around by themselves, alive. I said, oh, so that's, I thought that was real. So that got the gears going. Yeah.
Was it exciting to see this stuff, or was this, just Dad's work?
Oh, yeah. He wasn't allowed to take things home to work on.
Right.
No one was in those days because Disney's intrinsic value rules.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want anyone, removing their valuable things. So, right up to putting their own spacing on the pegs that we animate with.
Mm-hmm.
Your animation paper is punched
Mm-hmm.
to fit over the 3 pegs, and theirs were closer together than the standard pegs that most of the industry uses. So, again, it was to keep it central to the studio and
To
exclusive.
make sure it couldn't get out.
Yeah. So I rarely saw him working at home unless it was something that he didn't need pegs for.
Uh-huh.
So, and his job was layout. So he showed the animator where the character moved within the background.
Mm-hmm.
He created the background, the setting, on one sheet of paper, and then he started to show where the characters were going to move throughout that scene.
Mm.
That's the layout artist's job
For
for each scene in the film. Yeah.
In between artists, I think, is a phrase I read
Oh,
in the
yeah,
book.
well, that comes in the animation part, but this is
Yeah.
the actual layout and
Okay.
planning of the scene, yeah, before any of the movement takes place. And then that goes to the animators, and they say, oh, okay, the layout drawing's here. So,
It's amazing how specialized.
this is my start, this is my stop. Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing how specialized this work is.
Yeah,
People,
it's all departmentalized. Less so now because it's been, those functions are grouped together
Mhm.
and made easier in digital, and you don't have to be able to draw anymore.
Mhm.
You don't have to have drawing skills anymore to do animation. And I think that's the big appeal. That's why people have embraced digital animation over hand drawn. But people constantly ask me, why didn't you move into digital? I said, because there's no fun in that for me.
Uh-huh.
I get more of a kick seeing the drawings come to life than something that's filtered through the computer.
Do you lament that digital age? Do you prefer the
No,
hand-drawn
I was
age?
just hoping that it would be room for both formats, but the one has seemed to take over the other, at least in America.
Hmm.
France and Japan, they're still doing half and half. They're
Mhm.
doing hybrid filmmaking where they use the computer for vehicles and things like that, and some of the effects, and the characters are still done by hand.
Well, one of the things that inspired you to get into animation in the first place was Yellow Submarine, correct?
Yes.
And that had some weird technical. They had the rotoscope.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it had some experimental animation in it. I can't remember the artist's name, but he was hired just to do the special songs. Like "It's Only a Northern Song" was one
Mhm.
of them. "Lucy in the Sky" was his other one. And
That's the
it's
one that really
very
got me.
free and loose and interpretive and very straight ahead kind of animation. He would take huge chunks of Busby Berkeley movies from the 20s and 30s,
Mhm.
40s, and cut them together. And then he would rotoscope them right onto the celluloid
Mhm.
in real psychedelic pop art kinds of ways. And then change the timing somewhat, the way he exposed those cells.
Mhm.
So it just shimmers and changes.
Uh-huh.
And very 60s thing to do. That's why I got all excited, because it was pop art. And I was, as a child of the 60s, I was well into that
Mhm.
genre. So I had blacklight posters all over my walls,
Uh-huh.
on the ceiling, everywhere.
And your dad didn't like that particular, especially that particular
No,
one that you were drawn to. The
My
Lucy in the
brothers took
Sky.
me to see it first, and then my father. I said, "You got to come and see this, Dad. It's not Disney, but it's pretty wonderful."
Mhm.
So that really showed me there was possibilities beyond Disney style
Mhm.
to try other things. So, and he loved the movie, but he just could not get himself to like that part.
Uh-huh.
I think it's because it was loose. You know, when you're an early Disney artist, that was ingrained in you to clean up everything up and make it look pretty. You know?
Uh-huh.
So, to draft it out, and he just couldn't stand the paint moving all over the place.
Was that your teenage rebellion? Other kids would go out and smoke or stay out all night, and you...
I just loved it. I just knew I liked it. It wasn't a rebellion or anything. And I was sorry that he didn't like it, but I did.
Did you learn a lot as a kid visiting these studios? Did you absorb this stuff? And
Not right away. No, I didn't really understand how it was done, even though they would roll the scenes for me and put them on the movie or on them for me. That came later when I actually started to learn.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
so is that an influence
real thing.
At all? Or?
Well, I took after him and watching him draw at home, and then I would mimic him. But as far as starting art, I was 2 years old and in my crib. And I was drawing through the bars of my crib on the wall with crayons. So they moved the crib away from the wall and gave me paper finally. And so that was the beginning. But you'll never guess, or maybe you will, what I did for my drawings.
What you did? Well,
oddly enough,
I don't want to guess.
Dancing princesses with birds alighting on their fingers, things. And so I guess I was predisposed to end up doing princesses later. Yeah. But nobody told me that. I just brought it in. So
was Yellow Submarine was that your epiphany that this is what I want to do?
Yeah, pretty much. I understood, when people made the Disney films, but this was something entirely new, and I thought, well, you can do anything you want with it.
And then,
as long as you have a great story. That had such an unusual story, too.
Yellow Submarine.
And the Beatles had very little to do with it, actually. So, I think it was the author of Jonathan Livingston Seagull, actually, that did the screenplay. It was very esoteric. Very 60s.
Right. Well, that's
hippie
what got,
stuff.
That's the movie that got me into rock and roll. I listened to nothing but country music until I saw that movie, and then that was something so new and
I
different.
was heavily into the Beatles starting in '64 when we became aware of them in America. Yeah.
So you see this...
and their music grew and developed beyond I want to hold your hand, yeah, phase. That was their baby steps, and they just blossomed.
Yeah, well, people
amazing group.
It's amazing to think Yellow Submarine and Sgt. Pepper happened so close together. Yeah. It was less than a year from Sgt. Pepper to Yellow Submarine.
Yeah. And incredible albums, both of them, and they set the industry on its ear. I mean, the people paid attention. The other artists, the other musical artists, certainly paid attention. They started doing their own specialty albums.
So you see Yellow Submarine, and was your first paid job in animation with Disney?
No, that was with Hanna-Barbera.
Hanna-Barbera, okay.
It was a roundabout way because I was already studying at UCLA. Actually, something that would serve me well later when I got to Disney Consumer Products. I was studying graphic design for product development and also advertising. So, a mixed bag of things. In fact, we even sculpted soap bottles. They were starting to make liquid soap back then. This is around 76 or 7. And 1977 came around, and my father came home from where he was working then, which was Hanna-Barbera. And my mother also. She was downstairs in ink and paint. So he said, Harry Love is starting a class, and in between animation, they want to get new blood into the company. And the only two schools that were teaching animation of any kind were California Institute of the Arts, or CalArts, in Valencia, which is the Disney-run school, and Sheridan College in Canada. And they're the people that turned out the animators that made Rock and Rule and all the Nelvana films that came out. The Halloween special, Thanksgiving, all those beautiful things they did. And the Star Wars animation. So, and a lot of my friends from Sheridan joined me at Hanna-Barbera over the years, too. But, so it was 2 nights a week at Hanna-Barbera, and there were 30 of us, and we all went through the course, and we all got hired. And I didn't stay in that department long, but that was the entry level of the business back then. was in between the animators' extremes. So you got to learn how to read charts that the animator would make for you to follow them up. You learned how to flip the paper and check your motion in between drawing, making sure it's flowing smoothly. It's actually moving and coming to life, and then you got put into the assistant animators pool, which was vast. It was this huge room. All these people were just close to their boards drawing all day.
Well, there's a lot of skills in that aren't necessarily just art. There's a lot of technical skill that goes along.
Yeah, you have to think a lot while you're doing it. Gary Goldman later said to me, doing animations is like trying to keep 50 pennies spinning at once. It's not just the drawing, it's all the technical things, the timing and all of it. So I didn't stay in that department long, though, because Bob Singer was looking for people to be in character design. They had a ton of models they had to design for all the renewed shows they were doing. We did New Jetsons, New Flintstones, a lot of their older characters and some new ones that we had to develop. So he first hired my friend Sandra Young out of the assistant pool. He wanted somebody with great line work, good design sensibility. So she got hired first, and then she says, "What about Philo?" So I ended up in there for 6 years.
What was
designing characters for Hanna-Barbera?
What were the first characters you designed?
The first ones were incidental characters for the Jetsons, the New Jetsons, and Flintstones, and also when Star Wars came out, everything went space age. And everyone jumped on the bandwagon, so there was a show called Galaxy Goof-Ups and Yogi's Space Race, and where they took the old characters and we made little spaceships for them to race around in. And they were kind of funny shows. And what else? Back then we did New Popeyes, too, which wasn't originally a Hanna-Barbera property, but we ended up doing the show, and Godzilla, too. That was one of the first ones.
It's a lot of classic characters, and you're brought in to do character design with something that already exists. Especially as someone who's new to the job. How did you approach that? How much was inspiration? How much was direction from Hanna-Barbera?
Well, Bob Singer, of course, worked with us every day. He would go over our drawings and show us ways to improve them. But you just had to imagine you were one of the original artists on that show and realize what kind of style it was. Because they were all basically a Hanna-Barbera style, which is very simple and cartoony, but it's very pleasing too. So, and the time and place that they were created in. So, this was already the 70s, so I tried to make everything look like it was in the 60s. Jetsons was the view of the future from the 60s point of view. The 1960s art idioms.
It's so fun to see old films and old cartoons where they have the view of the future. When people are playing. You're in the year 2050 and every video game looks like Pong. Yeah. Because that's all they can conceive of.
That's all they could. Yeah, that's as far as they went. One of my favorite visions of the future is Metropolis, 1927.
Oh yeah, that was one
film. And there's still buildings being made that look just like the movie, wings that come off that are rounded, and certainly Blade Runner took a cue from Metropolis too.
Right.
The round, huge, arcology apartment buildings and things. There were like hundreds of floors up into the skyline.
Do you process a lot of things visually that way? You just made the connection between those two movies.
Yeah,
I hadn't thought of it that way.
There's a fair amount of research that goes into those things, even the simple cartoons. If a character had a period costume, you better be ready to research it. So, we have ancient Egyptian characters and Roman characters. So you say, let's see how they actually did a toga, and then you put that on your character in their style. Yeah.
Ever tempted to draw a wristwatch on a Roman soldier like this?
Sundial.
Thing that you'd catch every once in a while in a movie that you'd see.
Yeah,
The guy forgot to take his wristwatch off, and he's
a miniature sundial. I know we did that one time on his wrist.
So you're at Hanna-Barbera. What's in between that and Disney?
Oh gosh, that would have been Paramount and then Don Bluth.
Mm-hmm.
Paramount first in 1979. Four of us were hired on. We went on sabbatical from Hanna-Barbera, and I went with one of my lead animators, John Kimball, Ward Kimball's son, one of his children. I'd known Ward when I was a little boy. So John was there first, and then he asked me to come over. And he says, they're going to need to pick up your desk because they don't have any provision for us as animators. So I arranged a time with them, the Paramount people, to come and get my desk and bring it out to Marina Del Rey, where they were making the effects. Mm-hmm. At Douglas Trumbull's facility. It was called Entertainment Effects Group. Mm-hmm. It used to be called Future General before that. And when he was with Paramount, now he was a separate, standalone person. But he was called Entertainment Effects Group, EEG for short. So we joined them. We took over the reins from Robert Abel and Associates, who had tried to finish the effects, but only had lighting effect tests. Mm-hmm. They only had lots of tests to show us. So no finished footage, so we came in and we finished the movie.
Mm-hmm. What was your function on a live-action movie? Designing things for sets?
Back then, no, it was special effects animation, and it was still being done by hand because computer graphics weren't in use in films until around 1989 with The Abyss and Batman and Young Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, I loved that movie.
Yeah. You remember when the stained glass window came to life? That was one of the first computer graphics. It was just terrific. Nobody had ever seen anything like that. And the water pods in Abyss. Mm-hmm. Abyss, in its uncut form, is an amazing movie. If you ever get to see the director's edition. It's a little longer, but it makes more sense than the cut-up version that they released. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you go from there to Bluth and then to
right after that I went back to Hanna-Barbera to work on Heidi's Song for a few months, and then we'd all heard that in the industry that Don Bluth had taken a lot of people that volunteered, and they'd made their own film called Banjo the Woodpile Cat, and it finally aired on HBO, and shortly after that I just thought it was terrific, and after that they left Disney. They resigned, and he piled everyone in his pickup truck, and off they went to Studio City in California, and that's where I was living at the time. So lucky me, I walked to work when I started working with them.
Does the job feel the same from place to place if you're going from Hanna-Barbera to a studio to somewhere else?
Oh, sure. Not only do they have their own style, but they have their own way of working, and their own hours too. They're usually flexible. Yeah. And then they trust you to record your hours yourself rather than punch a clock.
But you're not freelancers at that point, or are you?
No. You're actually you're contracted to. Yeah. So they had just finished doing the animation for Xanadu when I was starting on Secret of Nim. Mm-hmm. It was early on in the production, 1980 or so. And so I got to go to the wrap party when they had it for Xanadu. Uh-huh. I liked what they did with the song they had to do. Mm-hmm. And the producers were in a panic because Jeff Lynne, who wrote half of the score, he said, I'm only going to allow you to use all of my music if you put Don't Walk Away. Uh-huh. He was very partial to all of his songs, wanted to see them all in the movie. So they said, oh no, it's too clunky and it won't fit into the movie anywhere, and we can't make it work. So they found Don at the last minute, and they did a great job on it. Mm-hmm. And it's in the movie, and everyone was happy, and the movie came out. Uh-huh. Jeff Lynne especially. So we went right into the owl sequence, where Mrs. Brisby gets taken to meet the owl. And in animation, it's the same as live action in that, live action, the reasons you do a certain sequence or group of sequences first is because you have a location only for a set amount of time. So you shoot everything that's going to happen there, including costume changes and everything, in that location while you've got it, or that set before the set has to be struck. And then the reason we do it that way in animation is you take your strongest sequences and do those first. The things you consider to be the strongest story points. So that was certainly a big one, is having the owl tell her you need to go to the rats and have them help you move your home. That was a small part of it. It ends up they're more, she's more of a help to them than they are to her. That was the whole crux of the thing.
And would you say Little Mermaid is what you're best known for?
Probably. It's more and more. It's going to be Nim now too, because it's got more of a following than it did back then. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how these something that maybe sort of written off of, well, that's over.
Yeah.
Pops back up.
Yeah. Well, few films are actually hits right off the bat. Even Pinocchio was not a hit when it came out, or Bambi, or any of them really. But over the years, they become beloved. And I never thought Star Trek would gain an audience either, or fans, but the first one.
Yeah, I remember that.
Actually,
did not
people
go well.
love it a lot more now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your experience like working on Little Mermaid? What was your day-to-day working on that film?
Well, for starters, I was thrilled because that's the movie I always wanted to make, and I kept getting these movies that had no songs in them. I wanted a fairy tale with music, and I wasn't getting that. I was getting this dark, heavy stuff, for children, like Secret of Nim and Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night. And just really dark stuff. Not that Mermaid isn't dark in a lot of ways, but it's a musical, and it harkens back to the films Disney used to supervise when he was alive. So that's what got me interested, and of course, Yellow Submarine being an entire musical too. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do musical animation. So that's how they lured me in. My friends, John and Ron, the directors of the film, they hadn't seen me since Black Cauldron, so they played me the score, and I said, "That's it. Where do I sign?" And that's when I met Howard Ashman and Alan Menken, the composers that they had put together for the film. They went on to have a nice career with Disney also. So, but that was really the drawing point for me. So I was just thrilled to work on it every day. And they weren't quite ready for me to start on developing Ariel yet, because I had to wait for Dan Haskett to arrive from New York. So while he was busy packing up out there and coming into California, they put me on Ursula for a while. They said, "How would you like to do Ursula for a while with Rob Minkoff?" So we started doing some rough tests of her. We used Rob's friend Max Kirby to act out the part for us on video. And he's a great improvisational comedy actor that Rob knew. So we moosed his hair up and painted his face exaggerated, put a muumuu on him, and we had him just turn him loose, and he invented all kinds of business for her, including pulling the squiggly things down. And on the whole, I've been a saint. We're unfortunate. He came up with all that stuff. So that makes our job a lot easier. But then when we had that done, we turned it over to Ruben Aquino when he came off Oliver and Company. And he was the lead animator. And I'd met Ruben at Hanna-Barbera. So we were like a nomadic tribe. We would, end up in the same studios, all of us, over the years. And so I was thrilled. I was handing it off to another friend. And so by that time, Dan arrived. We started working on Ariel for several weeks and thinking about her hair. at times it felt like, well, a camel is a horse designed by committee. At times it felt like that because we were several cooks trying to overtake the broth. And even so much as how are we going to handle her hair. So they drove me crazy about that hair.
Well, where does a process like that start? Do you read the script and then they ask you to mock up some ideas and then...
People have already done storyboards and a lot of preliminary work too. People like Chris Buck had done some drawings of Ariel, his interpretation. And we took all of that into consideration. And also what kind of character she is. And considering her age and how we were going to depict that. Because she's somewhere between babyhood and womanhood. So the features are a little lower on her head than the adult characters, for example. So that all comes into play. And then we usually pick people that are real, usually performers, other entertainers that inspire us. So for me, it was Emmanuel Barrett, who had just made a film called My Date with an Angel back then. Very pretty, blonde French actress. And she was the angel. My friend Mark Brian Wilson did the puppeteering on her wings. So, it's like 6 degrees of separation kind of business. But
does anybody ever recognize themselves as the inspiration for something you've designed?
No, I doubt that she. I doubt that she would, because I used mostly her graceful neck for Ariel. So we used pieces of people for things. Christina Applegate's hair from Married with Children became that little shelf of hair.
Right.
Finally, we got the hair figured out.
I'll never look at the character the same way again. No, after that.
And there's a funny Brazier story too, because Jeffrey Katzenberg went ballistic the first time he saw what we had done. As actually it was Dan's scene, Dan Haskett. He gave her seashell pasties, something like a stripper might wear, and the breasts were moving independently to show that there was underwater current. They even had separate timing charts for each side. So
nothing
that
in
didn't
these
fly.
movies.
That did not fly with Jeffrey. I saw him get up in the dark theater and during dailies and walk quietly out, through the back of the auditorium, and I thought, oh boy, here it comes. So just before lunch, I went back to work. We still didn't have offices, and we were just moving into the main building from the trailers where we started. And I hear voices raising in the director's room just down the hall from me. With the door closed, they were that loud. So he comes out. It's kind of like that scene in The Incredibles where the boss comes out, Par! He's all red. Well, Jeffrey's about that height, too. He was still red. He says, so Philo, what are you doing for lunch? And I said, well, Jeffrey, I think I'm going to be eating. How about you? He says, no, you're not going to do that. Right away, you're going to give me a brassiere. You're going to have it ready after lunch. I said, oh, okay. You don't say no to Jeffrey. I met Jeffrey on Star Trek. He was our supervisor there. And a decade later, here we are doing Mermaid for Disney. So go figure. But he says, no, we're making white bread here. I need a brassiere of some kind. So I drawings of her turning with her hands over her head like this. And got it all done. Even showed a little clasp that you only see a couple times in the movie because her hair covers it over for the most part. But I wanted to make sure it was there in case anyone ever had to draw it. And he says, that's great. Let's print it up and get it out to everybody. So we did. And then I could go eat.
You're not tempted to get yourself in trouble in a moment like that and draw like the Madonna cone brassiere onto the character. I got it. She's what you wanted a brassiere, right?
Yeah. But the day-to-day was really, it was hard work, but when we finally moved into animation, we got the characters designed, and that was great. Developed them a little more once we got to know them and move them around. They naturally just grow and get better. But people often ask me, oh, you must have known it was going to be this glorious hit, and how proud you must have been. And I said, no, that's not what you're thinking. You're sitting there with your headphones madly flipping away and trying to get your 8 drawings a day done that are required, sometimes more if you can.
So you're not thinking...
You're thinking, oh God, how am I going to get my footage for the week? That's not what you're thinking.
But you're creating something for Disney, and there's a good chance, this is in a canon that's celebrated.
Yeah.
There's got to be something in your mind going,
Yeah.
there's some pressure here beyond just getting your daily
There was
stuff.
a little extra pressure too, because it used to take 3 and 4 years to make a movie, and Oliver and Company was the last one to take 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
The studio said, "That's it." By this time, we were in Glendale, on Flower Street, just across the street from Walt Disney Imagineering. In fact, our trailers where we started Mermaid were right next to Disney Imagineering.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to eat in their diner, and we got as big as houses at the time. Because we were being served meals morning, noon, and night to get the film done in 18 months, which is a year and a half. So, and they hired all my friends that had been laid off from Filmation when they closed their doors. And I was glad to have them. So there was a ton of drawings to get through. And very labor intensive.
Mm-hmm.
More so because we were asked to do it in 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was used to that yet.
We've only got a few more minutes until the next thing is going to start, but there are a few things I want to get to. I do want to talk about Dragon's Lair.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hard for people to conceive of how revolutionary that was at the time, that you went from the little Atari stick figures to a full cartoon you could control, or other people could control. I never could. I waited in line for half an hour and then got rolled over by the balls every time in 10 seconds, and then went to the back of the line. It was huge lines for this.
I made it through the swinging ropes with the fire, and that's as far as it went.
You could never do it either.
I told people, I could make the stuff, but I could not play it.
No, I could never get the timing
I'm
right.
also several voices in the games.
Oh, you are? What voices are you in the game? So you got to come back to voiceover acting.
The Mudmen and Space Ace was was the computer voice you kept hearing all through the thing. Alert, CLF, all exits to level 1. Close main gate. And the little triangular guys in Space Ace.
How big of a challenge was it to make a game like this?
It was actually much more of a breeze because the scenes were only, in footage terms, they were only 3 or 4 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So you could breeze through them, and they were so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a breath of fresh air after spending all those days doing slow in-betweens on Secret of NIMH, making everything look beautiful. You didn't have to care about the drawings. You were only going to see them for a fraction of a second. It's going to be the motion that you're going to see. You're going to feel it. You're not going to see every single drawing.
So I remember the incredible buzz for that game when I was in grade school when it came out.
Yeah.
And they could make a video game that looks like a cartoon, and now they've got video games that look real, but it's...
Yeah. And the colors were dazzling, too.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun with color in there.
I did want to ask you about your mother's experience as an animator as well.
Mm-hmm.
Did she have a tougher time breaking in as an animator?
As a rule, if you were female, you got relegated to ink and paint.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it was so much a male domination. What's the word? I'll think of it. But I don't think it was so much that, but the Walt, depending on the male artist, for whatever reason, it wasn't a value judgment about your gender. It was just that if you were a talented painter and you were female, you went in there.
Mm-hmm.
But she was thrilled because this was wartime when she was hired, 1942, and my dad joined the company in 44. That's the year he met her. In fact, I have her picture here. But that's me with my dad.
Yes, so the book you can show people.
Here's my beautiful mother. It was a beauty contest that brought her to Hollywood in the first place. She was a girl from Utah, little Mormon girl, 17 years old. And she tried showbiz and then went back home. Wasn't for her. She came back when she was 22 and applied at Disney and got right in.
Mm-hmm.
So.
We need to wrap up, but I want to talk
Sure.
about what you're doing now with Silver Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
You're currently working on Whispers from the Void.
Whispers from the Void.
What can you say about that?
those are 4 women. We call them Team Monster. And it's the female point of view for the supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
And in this universe, monsters are based on they belong to groups of the 7 deadly sins.
Mm-hmm.
Like ghosts are envy, flesh constructs, which is what one of the characters is
mm-hmm.
wrath.
Mm-hmm.
Pride is mad scientists and witches and things like that. So they're groupings of beings based on the 7 deadly sins, and these 4 actually band together and do good against the other
Mm-hmm.
nasty little things that are out there.
Where can people find this?
Oh, well, the first issue I think we might have. We might be out of print on that one for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But there's issue 1. Issue 2 I've been working on for some time,
Uh-huh.
and I want to finish it, but I keep getting sidetracked to other things that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
We're always doing something.
And where can people find your work? What's the best way to keep up with what you do?
Well, you can go to Silver Phoenix Entertainment on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to silverphoenix.net on the internet, and we're all in there. There's about 14 of us that work together.
Mm-hmm.
And we have profiles on that page. There's also my art page on Facebook, Philo Barnhart Art.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm soon going to have another one called Philo Barnhart Commission Connection.
Well, thank you for taking the time to do
you.
this. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That was
Thank you.
fun. I remembered a lot of things I hadn't thought about for a while.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to go right into the next.
Hell to the hell isn't always a trend.
Thanks again to Philo Barnhart for speaking with me. You can find out more about his work at silverphoenix.net or search for him on Facebook. Thanks also to the Northeast Comic-Con and Gary Summers for having me out. You can find out more about their guests and schedule at necomicons.com. And remember, that's Comic-Cons with an S.com because they do that twice a year. And you can also find them on Facebook and Twitter. And if you like this or any other episode of the Department of Tangents podcast, please consider subscribing and or rating us on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. It's a tremendous help in getting the word out. And for photos, videos, movie reviews, and other content, go to departmentoftangents.com. I've just posted a review of Pet Sematary, and this podcast is hitting the airwaves just as I'm planning on heading out for a screening of The Man Who Killed Don Quixote, and I'm going to post a review of that soon after, so look for that. This week's featured track is Permanent Crush from Matt York's upcoming album Bruisable Heart. York is an exceptional songwriter and performer, which you already know if you heard him on episode 49 of this podcast and checked out his music. I've had the pleasure of playing with Mr. York on a few occasions, and I can tell you he is a prolific and musically restless fellow. I've heard a couple of different versions of this song and some of the others he's working on, and you're in for a treat when the final album drops earlier this summer. Look for news about that and York's other work at mattyorkmusic.com and on Facebook and Twitter. And now, Permanent Crush by Matt York.
Yeah, you know, I guess it's probably true that I am never gonna find a girl that loves me like you do. Through all the pain and all the tears and all the broken-hearted moments, you're the one that always pulls me through. But lately everything's been changing, and it seems like all these bad times are rolling in. You loved me when I was perfect, but you seem to love me just a little more when I sinned. I'm out of my head, but I keep hanging around. I'm gonna love you till all of these ships that burn down. I ain't asking for much. You're my permanent crush. I'm gonna love you till all of this falls to the ground. Try a little tenderness. Try a little tenderness. Try a little tenderness. with me. I'm out of my head, but I keep hanging around. I'm gonna love you till all of this shit's the burn down. I ain't asking for much. You're my permanent crush. I'm gonna love you till all of this falls to the ground. I'm gonna love you till all of this falls to the ground.
Neil Young.